Hi everyone, you are Reddit expose there, enjoy watching.
Los Angeles is called the City of Angels, but for me it will always remain the City of Lost Hopes. This is where I met Emily, with a smile brighter than the California sun, eyes the color of the ocean, and faith in the future that was enough for both of them. We dreamed of a white fence and children's laughter on the lawn, naive, young, absolutely in love. But life is not a Hollywood scenario. Emily went to endless auditions, and I spent days writing in coffee shops, forgetting to eat and sleep. She came back more tired and disappointed, and I became more and more obsessed with my ideas. A wall was growing between us. Her desperation irritated me. My obsession made her feel guilty. We stopped talking, stopped seeing each other for real, and one day she just left, leaving a note on the kitchen table. I can't take it anymore. It's been 5 years. I'm still in Los Angeles. My book became a bestseller. I got what I dreamed of. I live in a beautiful house in Beverly Hills. I hear compliments, I collect awards, and I feel empty. Each review is a reminder that Emily is not there to share the joy. I imagine how her eyes would glow, how proud she would be of me, and I realize that this is just a fantasy. In the crowd, I'm still looking for her gait, silhouette, vanilla scent. My heart freezes, and then it breaks against reality. It's not her. I tried to find her by calling mutual friends and posting on social media. To no avail. She disappeared like a morning mist. I do not know if she is happy, if she has found her place. I want to believe that yes, and yet there is a quiet hope that someday our paths will cross, and we will understand why everything turned out the way it did. Sometimes at night, when the city is quiet, she returns, in the rustle of leaves, in a light breeze, in that vanilla train. I flip through old photos, trying to read the answer in her smile and look. Where did I take a wrong turn? There is no answer, just silence and a bitter taste of regret. I write about love, loss, and hope my books find readers, but no one knows that my personal pain is hidden behind every line. Emily is my muse and my eternal loss, the shadow that haunts and the light that leads. The days are dragging by like a gray ribbon, and the memories are getting brighter. They say time heals. I do not believe. It only grinds off the sharp edges, turning the acute pain into a dull, permanent one. I live in a world where every sound and smell reminds me of her, the music we listened to, the flowers she loved, the sunsets we met by the hand. My friends advise me to open up to new things, but how can I replace the sun with the moon? How can I forget her sincere laughter and warm hugs? She is a part of me, forever imprinted in my soul. There are moments when I can almost hear her whispering, live, love, be happy. But happiness without it seems fake. I keep creating, it's my way of being around her, of keeping her present. Let others find solace in my texts. For me it is a cry of the soul, an attempt to return something that will not return. I'm learning to take my grief for granted as evidence that I'm lucky enough to truly love. I create new little rituals that keep her around. I go to our old coffee bar on Sunset, order that croissant, write her letters that I won't send to anyone. I tell you about her kindness, talent, and light. This is how our story continues to live on in the hearts of others. Gradually, the darkness is thinning. The pain doesn't disappear. It changes. It becomes quiet, bright, like nostalgia for the happiness that was. I'm learning to smile when I remember, not because I forgot, but because I'm grateful. I'm not so afraid to look ahead anymore. I'm moving on, not without her, but with her light inside. I don't erase the past, but I stop living it alone. I allow myself new interests, new people, not as a substitute, but as a continuation. Love is an ocean with enough room for everyone, and its wave is always in me. I no longer postpone my life for later, but live here and now, trying to be someone she would be proud of. And when I meet the dawn, I quietly thank her for one more day to carry her love into the world. Sometimes, in a special silence, I can almost physically feel her next to me, warmth, a subtle scent, the shadow of a smile. In moments of doubt, it becomes a pillar. I know that she is my guardian and my compass. I take care of her things, touch the scarf with trepidation, where this light vanilla trace still lingers, and give myself the right to cry, and then the right to live again. I understand that the scar will remain forever, but this is not a scar of weakness, but of love. Let him remind you that I loved and was loved. And if one day we meet there, everything I've written will finally make complete sense. In the meantime, I will write while I hold my pen, love while my heart is beating, while I see her light ahead. Our love is my beacon. It doesn't go out. And even though Los Angeles is a city of lost hopes for me, in its nose and neon, I still hear her laughter and feel how invisibly she leads me on. Spring in Los Angeles came not by the calendar, but by the Santa Ana wind, dry, warm, mercilessly clear. In the morning, I went for a jog in Griffith Park, up to the observatory, past the dusty sage grass and stone trails that remember endless what if. He breathed loudly, as if every inhale was leave and every exhale was forgive. At the top, he sat on a low wall and took out an old notebook. I wrote her a letter, without an address or date, as always, about the fact that I still live among her signs, vanilla in my morning cappuccino, the light on Sunset Boulevard, the music from the neighbor's window, which we once guessed together. I walked down slowly, in a serpentine pattern. Below, the city was as nosy as the sea, and for the first time in a long time, this nose was not frightening. In the afternoon, I received a letter to the editorial office from the Little Theater in Echo Park. The director wrote that he wanted to direct my short story Vanilla Aftertaste and invited me to discuss it. It's a strange coincidence, he added. A few years ago, an actress, Emily, came to read to us with the same text in her hands. She left early, leaving a notebook with notes. We keep it as a talisman. If you want, take a look. I reread the line twice. My heart responded not with pain, but with excitement, as before meeting an old house. The theater turned out to be on the second floor above a vinyl store. Brickwork, sagging garlands, the smell of dust and coffee. The director, a tired guy in a hoodie, carefully took out a thin notebook. I recognized the handwriting right away. Fast, slightly tilted to the right. The margins were covered with lines and arrows, and next to them were my own lines, underlined as if they had been spoken aloud. On one of the sheets is someone else's scene, and its short note. He knows how to hear silence. He's scared, but it's going to be loud. I believe it. Him is for me. I sat on the edge of the stage and held this page in my hands for a long time, like a hand across a distance. We talked with the guys until the evening. They wanted honesty on stage, not gestures about love, but the very emptiness and hope that everything is made of. I agreed to help with the adaptation. I went outside, and the air smelled of orange peel and vinyl from the open door. I stood there thinking that it was probably time to put my memory into action. That's how our vanilla evenings were born. Open readings on Fridays, where aspiring actors and writers came. We rented a small room in Melrose, put up a dozen chairs, bought a cheap projector, and hung a sheet on the wall. We speak softly. We criticize carefully. We are not disappearing. On the first evening, I read an excerpt and trembled as if I were a debutante again. On the second, I listened to a girl with a scythe, who was almost whispering someone else's letter to herself. People weren't crying loudly, but somehow inwardly, gratefully. I left one empty chair in the front row. No one asked why. Everyone understood. The work gradually changed the outline. I refused several high-profile interviews because I didn't want to replace the truth with a story again. Instead, he wrote a column about quiet things, about how love remains in everyday objects, in a teaspoon imprinted with someone's laughter, in a striped plaid smelling of cinnamon. Readers sent answers, their vanilla signs. I realized that we, strangers to each other, are able to gather one common light. Sometimes, of course, I got overwhelmed. I would suddenly find her scarf in the dresser drawer, tucked into a corner, holding that same light scent. Or he caught a familiar silhouette in the window on Sunset. His heart rushed forward, and his mind caught up later, admitting, no, not her. At such moments, I would get in my car and drive through the city at night without a destination. Hudson, La Brea, Fairfax, to the ocean and back. I listened to old tapes, stopped at a closed shop with a neon open and wrote her another letter. I didn't ask for a miracle anymore. I was just telling you how the day went. It helped. A month later, the director called again. We are doing a montage reading. Will you come? I'm here. There are wooden cubes on the stage instead of decorations, voices that are just looking for a tone. And suddenly, the girl who read her role, not similar, not a copy, completely different, but in the nuances, there is the same courage not to close the pause, to maintain silence. After reading it, she came over and said sheepishly, "Thank you for the text. I've lived it." I nodded, and for the first time in a long time, those words didn't hurt, they treated. I didn't see her as a replacement. I saw the sequel. I started doing what I had been putting off. I went to the bookstore on Spring Street, where there is always a slight smell of dust and hope, and arranged for a memorial evening for the baby, not a funeral evening, but a warm one, reading letters to those we loved and lost, whether alive or gone. People came with envelopes, sat on the edge of the stage and read. Someone was laughing, someone was crying, someone was silent and just holding the paper. At the end, we turned off the lights and left the music playing softly. There was always a small bowl of vanilla cookies on the table. That was our sign. At the same time, I started a scholarship named after her, a tiny one, for the first month of rent and acting classes for those who came to Los Angeles with 2 suitcases and a dream. Nothing heroic, just as much as I was looking for. The first 2 recipients brought their own thank you cards. One of them had a sun with a face painted on it. To break through any fog, they signed. I put the postcard on my desk next to her picture, where she squints at the light and laughs, unaware of how much she will one day capture my life. Sometimes I went to the ocean at sunset, where the wine mixes salt, gasoline and cotton candy from the pier. I sat on the cold concrete and listened to the waves stubbornly rewriting the shore. At such moments, I understood. Grief is also a wave. First she breaks, then she rolls, then she teaches you how to stay on the board. One evening, I took out tiny vanilla sticks from my pocket, a funny ritual invented on a lonely night, and threw a couple into the water. It wasn't a vacation, it was a thank you. Life has stopped dividing into before and after according to the second hand. It has become a scattering of dots between which you can draw lines without fear that your hand will tremble. I started sleeping with the windows open so that the morning light would wake me up before the alarm clock. I stopped looking for her face in every shop window and started looking for my steps at every turn. I found myself laughing more often, not louder, but more freely. And when, at another vanilla party, the girl with the sigh finished reading the letter and looked up, I heard the audience breathing evenly, and I thought, this is probably what memory looks like, which has learned to be love, and not just pain. I got a text late one night. The woman wrote that she knows me from books, that she once shared a room with Emily in a house near Laurel Canyon, that if it's important to you, she always read you, even when she said she couldn't. At the end is a photo, our old kitchen table, a mug with a cracked handle, the light from the window, and the postscript, she really loved the light on your morning pages. I looked at this photo for a long time, then I printed out the letter and put it in the very notebook where I am writing to her. I didn't need addresses or chronologies. I needed a sign that everything was got a text late one night. The woman wrote that she knows me from books, that she once shared a room with Emily in a house near Laurel Canyon, that if it's important to you, she always read you, even when she said she couldn't. At the end is a photo, our old kitchen table, a mug with a cracked handle, the light from the window, and the postscript, she really loved the light on your morning pages. I looked at this photo for a long time, then I printed out the letter and put it in the very notebook where I am writing to her. I didn't need addresses or chronologies. I need a sign that everything was real, and I got it not as proof, but as confirmation that we both lived fully. Now I often sit in my small office and work on a new book, not about loss, but about how people become bridges for each other. The working title is On the Spine, a city that knows how to listen. Los Angeles still glows with its neon and likes to dash hopes. That won't change. But between its lights there are quiet courtyards where laundry is drying, and children are chasing a ball, and someone is playing the blues on an old guitar. I'm learning to live there. In these passages between storefronts, on Fridays, I still leave an empty chair in the front row. It's not a place for a ghost, it's a place for light. Sometimes, when I leave, I feel that same light smell, vanilla with milk mixed with the evening air. I don't look back. I just smile and whisper, I'm here, I'm coming. And the city responds with the rustle of palm trees and the distant hum of the highway, like the sea, which you once learned not to be afraid of. I've never seen Los Angeles like this. It's like someone turned out the extra signs and turned up the volume on the whispers. As the rehearsals progress towards the premiere, I've never seen Los Angeles like this. It's like someone turned out the extra signs and turned up the volume on the whispers. As the rehearsals progress towards the premiere, I found myself lingering in the black room more and more often, not as an author, but as someone who had finally learned to sit in silence without demanding miracles from her. On the day of the general meeting, I wrote a short note for the program, a story about how not to make a prison out of memory. He put one ticket in the ticket office, in the name of E, and grinned himself. No magic, just the habit of leaving the light on. The premiere smelled of backstage dust and coffee from paper cups. There are 30-something seats in the hall. Everyone is occupied. I sat in the last row. The empty chair on the first floor is ours. Vanilla. I found myself looking not at the actress playing her, but at the pauses between the lines, at how the audience sighs at the same time, as someone hides their face in their hands. In the scene where the hero says out loud, "Success, without a witness, is silence," it was as if a draft had passed from behind the scenes. I closed my eyes and just listened. After the applause, it was the strangest time. When people hug the actors, and you stand against the wall and don't know where to put your hands. I went out onto the fire escape to breathe. The night was warm, with an orange peel somewhere below and a gasoline plume from the yard. I was about to leave when someone called out to me, "Are you the author?" A woman in her 40s, wearing a denim jacket over a black dress, was holding a program in her hands. "Marla," she introduced herself. "Emily and I once worked on an advertising platform, a small video for a local coffee chain. She was carrying your book with her at the time, laughing that she was reading A Man Who Can Write Smells." I probably nodded too sharply. Marla took an envelope out of her bag. "I had a box of props in my garage. I found this. I thought it was more important to you." Inside the envelope was a small Polaroid photo, a table by the window in our old coffee shop on Sunset. Inside the envelope was a small Polaroid photo, a table by the window in our old coffee shop on Sunset, 2 cappuccinos, a croissant broken in half, and a notebook with my slanted handwriting. On the back is the familiar tilt of the letters. "If he ever gets to the stage, tell him I hear E." The words didn't hit. They straightened out some kind of crease inside, which I'm used to. I thanked Marla for a long time, really. She shrugged her shoulders. "We owe someone a small return. This is mine." I walked to the car. The key was ringing in his pocket, but in his head there was not a gap, but a flat area. At the round-the-clock taco truck, I took out a notebook and wrote 3 lines. New rules, without pathos. 1. Do not confuse memory with expectation. 2. People have the right to disappear. 3. I have the right to live. On Fridays, our vanilla evenings grew. On the 3rd day, a guy came in with trembling hands and a notebook from a school ruler. He said, "I'm afraid to read. What if it gets bad?" I reply, "It's bad in our country when it's not fair. Honestly, it's always okay." He read a letter F. I started writing the inconspicuous things column to the editor, about a teaspoon with someone else's laughter, about a blanket that smells of December, about a key to a door that you can't open anymore. People sent their own the aftertaste of lavender, the clink of coins in a bakery, a lamp in which half the diodes burned out, but that's the way it should be. The typeface designer and I put together a small newspaper from this and spread it out in coffee shops, for free, in case someone needs it. Sometimes I got overwhelmed. I found her scarf in an old chest of drawers, tucked into a corner, with that light vanilla trail. I sat down on the floor, inhaled, and began to cry without acting. Quickly. Then I got up, washed the mug, finished the scene, and went to rehearsal. At some point, I noticed that the cycle had become shorter. The wave comes, hits, rolls back, and I'm no longer afraid that it will drag me away. A week after the premiere, I received an email. Calm, short, without exclamation points. "I'm Rose, and Emily Ann. I shared a room in a house on Laurel Canyon. You don't know me. I saw the announcement of your play and decided to write it. Emily is now in a small town by the ocean, teaching stage movement and photography to children. I won't give you any contacts. If she wants to, she find it herself. I just wanted to say that she looks at the light that you have on your morning pages and smiles. Thank you for not turning her into a character." I reread it several times and replied almost immediately, "Thank you for the light. You don't need to transfer anything. If ever, I'll be there." I didn't feel victorious and didn't fall back into waiting. It was like putting a check mark on a map, lives, and releasing your fingers from the pin. That evening, the guys from the theater and I went to a 24-hour diner in Fairfax. I watched the director, smeared with makeup, greedily eating scrambled eggs, and the actress, wiping her nose with her sleeve, laughing until she cried. And I thought, life, in fact, is where bacon is fried and someone retells someone else's scene without fear of losing their way. I promised myself the sea long ago. At dawn I drove to El Matador, stone arches, cold sand, seagulls like faded commas. On the beach, I set my phone to airplane mode and took two vanilla sticks out of my pocket. My funny and persistent ritual. He didn't throw it away, but held it in his palms, let the wine pick up the smell, and left the chopsticks in his pocket. I sat down and read aloud a page from a new book, the one where the hero stops looking for a sign and just takes a step. The ocean answered without words. That was enough. Returning, I caught myself in a new habit. I no longer listened to the city in search of her. I listened to myself not afterwards, but at the moment. If I'm tired, I'm leaving. If I'm happy, I'll call and share. If it's scary, that's what I say, scary. Items that didn't exist before appeared on the to-do list on the refrigerator. Call my father, buy a warm light bulb, don't plan anything on Sunday before lunch. A girl dancer from the studio across the street appeared at one of the evenings. Short hair, funny sweater with lemons, voice like she's always apologizing for taking a seat. She read a short text about a knee that hurts in the rain, and how the body remembers what the head has long decided to forget. I listened and got to know myself, not the plot, but the rhythm. Then she came over and said, "Thanks for the chair. Empty? For any. But that one is special." We had coffee a couple of times after the readings. We talked not about who and when, but about how not to turn a scene into a confession, and a confession into a scene. I didn't count the meetings. I didn't try to name it. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't plotting. I was just there. And I think that's exactly what I needed. Summer in Los Angeles is when the air is hot and the palm trees look like pencils on white paper. Vanilla evenings moved to a slightly larger hall. We were given old chairs from a closed cinema. Our memo was hanging on the wall. We speak softly. We criticize carefully. We are not disappearing. Under it, someone wrote with a marker, "And drink water." I didn't wash it. It's beautiful. We officially launched a mini scholarship in her name. We made a neat page where you could drop $10. At the first meeting of our guys, someone asked, "And if I lose my temper and leave, you'll be back?" I said, "Or you won't come back. We'll be there anyway." And at that moment, I realized, "We will be," is the most necessary phrase I had ever said, not only to others, but also to myself. Sometimes I'm drawn to the city from above. I climb Mulholland at night, park the car, and sit on the cold concrete. A grid of lights shimmers beneath me, as if someone has spilled sugar on black velvet. I remember how these lights once seemed to me like a panel of judges. Have you done enough? Proved it? Did you win? Now I look, and I just see houses, kitchens, someone's kettles, someone's laughter. I take out my phone and write myself a note. Space instead of emptiness. There used to be a hole inside. Now there's a place. It can be inhabited. I haven't stopped loving her. I stopped asking love for help. I stopped holding the city hostage to memory alone. I still leave an empty chair in the front row, not for the ghost, for the light. People get on it if they have to. Sometimes it doesn't. I'm not explaining anymore. There is a sign on the door of our small workshop. Welcome. If you're scared, let's breathe together. That's all I know how to offer, honestly. When the girl with the scythe finished reading the letter one evening, I caught a glance in the third row. A man in his 50s, wearing a lost jacket, smiled. The way you smile when you finally exhale. Then he came up and said, "I came by accident. I stayed because they don't rush me here." Thank you. I nodded and thought about it. But I stayed here, in this city, in this life, because my own if stopped hurrying me. And in the evening, returning home along La Brea, I felt the light vanilla trail again. Not from the past, but from a bakery that just closed. I breathed in, smiled, and whispered into the empty car, "I'm here. I'm coming." The city responded with the familiar hum of the highway, like the sea, which I finally trust. Autumn in Los Angeles doesn't look like autumn. The light just gets softer, and the palm trees suddenly stop looking painted. Rehearsals are over. The play has entered a stable mode. Vanilla evenings on Fridays have become something like a quiet club, without membership fees and toasts, where the main ritual is still the same, an empty chair in the front row. I started hearing people breathing the same way in important places, and it was almost music. One morning, I finally called my father. We didn't fight, we just lived on different frequencies for a long time. He spoke briefly. I answered at length and not to the point. This time it turned out the opposite. I asked, he told, about how in his youth he dreamed of being a photographer, but chose a warehouse and a stable salary. About how real courage is not to leave, but to stay and not get angry. I found myself thinking that this was the first time I wasn't arguing. In the end, he said, Son, I do not know what is going on with this. He hesitated. With your muse, that if love makes you kinder to the world, then everything is right. I wrote this phrase on a yellow sticker and stuck it to the monitor. Kinder means right. A guy from Boyle Heights came to the evenings, yawn, angry at himself, with eyes that were always looking for a way out. I read a text about my brother in prison. Then, on the stairs, he asked, "And if I lose my temper?" "You'll lose it," I said. "Come back when you can. We have a rule. We don't disappear." He nodded, hid his face in his hood, and left. 3 weeks later, he came back with an envelope. There was a photo inside, 2 plastic chairs at the entrance, and the sun stuck in the chain link. On the back, "To remember what the evening looks like when you're still here." I put the picture on the shelf next to the Polaroid from that envelope from Marla. The shelf became like a map not of cities, but of people. A dancer with a sweater covered in lemons, her name was Zoe, called me late one night. "Can I ask you for something stupid? Just drive to Urgent Key together." We were sitting in the waiting room, drinking disgusting soup from a vending machine and discussing why people on stage are often shy about good things. "Because it's a good defenseless one," she said. "It's easier to make fun of him, and the bad ones are protected by cynicism and irony," I added. "But they're like an armor that's uncomfortable to breathe in." Zoe snorted. "Bad armor. Give me the water instead." She laughed, and I caught myself being calm, which required no promises or signs from me. We agreed to take our time and not replace normal with forever or never. For some reason, it immediately took off a lot of excess. The new book moves slowly, like a sunset streetcar before traffic jams. The working title is The City That Knows How to Listen. I decided that there would be no big confessions in it, only scenes where people become bridges for each other. One chapter was born after a trip to the Highland Park School Club. I came to a meeting with 10th graders, and one girl asked, "Why write if everything has already been written?" "To call it my own way," I replied, "and to hear it in your voice." After the meeting, she came up and whispered, "I don't want to be silent anymore." This phrase was enough for me for an entire chapter. In November, I was invited to read at a bookstore in Santa Barbara. I went alone, left my phone in my bag, turned on a radio on the old wave, where the DJ speaks slowly and does not joke. The bookstore was bright, with a bulletin board at the entrance. On the board is the poster of the photo exhibition, Light Exercises, curated by E.C. The heart twitched, but did not fail. The name was without a surname, just initials, but still I understood. After reading, I went to a small gallery on the next street. On the walls there are children's hands in motion, shadows from jumping, sand flying from under their feet. And the light was the one she always squinted at. There was a book of reviews on the table. I didn't leave a name, just wrote, "Thank you for the way you teach the light not to be shy. I've learned this language." At the exit, a female supervisor in a plaid shirt approached me. "Are you from Los Angeles?" I recognized the accent. "Yes." "I'll tell the author that her language will be recognized. She loves that kind of news." "You don't have to transmit anything," I said. "If she wants to, she hear for herself." The woman smiled as if the agreement had been concluded. In the evening at the motel, I found a short, unsigned letter in the mail. "I saw your note. Thank you for your delicacy. I'm glad you can hear the pauses. Take care of them, E." I read it several times and didn't answer. The answer was that I didn't come for a meeting. It was enough for me to know that we both learned to take care of pauses. In winter, Vanille evenings moved to a more spacious hall. We were given the old rehearsal room in Fairfax, where the ceiling is stained and the lights are buzzing like a beehive. The guys and I brought carpets from a second-hand store. Someone brought a floor lamp. Someone brought a kettle. There was a piece of paper on the door with a crooked inscription, "If you're scared, let's breathe together." At some point, I realized that there were a lot of people, too many for the indoor heat. I was afraid to turn the meeting into a format and the live event into a habit. We have introduced a strange rule: no more than 40 witnesses. Everything else is a repeat. That way, everyone had room for their own breathing. A woman in her 60s approached me, with a neat gray haircut and hands that smelled of soap. She read the letter to her husband, with whom she had lived for 40 years, and at the end she said, "I thought I was going to swear, but it turned out to be a thank you." After that, she lingered, and then handed me a small sugar box. "There are 2 vanilla pods here." It just seemed right. I smiled. It seemed very correct. I still went to the ocean from time to time. This time, it's Venice, where there are canals and ducks, like in a silly postcard. I sat on the bridge, listened to the water sloshing against the stone, and thought that loss is also a skill. First you sink, then you hold on, then you learn to swim to a place where it's not so stormy. I wrote in my notebook, I'm not waiting for any more signs. I'm taking steps. And suddenly I realized how corny it sounds, and how important it is to me right now. Eating on time, sleeping, calling a friend, walking without headphones. Tonality has become a new luxury lifestyle. Zoe and I started dating on Saturdays, not dating, but walking. Sometimes there was a market in Hollywood, sometimes there was an empty studio hall where she showed bundles, and I read pieces of text aloud. We went through half the bookstores, somewhere we bought one old record just for the cover, somewhere we left $1 in a box for librarian's coffee. Once she said, "Do you know that you don't have to be strong around me?" "I'm not trying to," I reply. "I'm just trying to be honest." "Honesty makes you strong," she said, "and handsome." We laughed because it sounded too bookish, but I remembered it anyway. In the spring, I took a new stage to the theater, a short one with no effects. The hero comes to the hall, sits on an empty chair and stays sitting until the hall stops making noise. Then he gets up and leaves without saying anything. The director looked at it, nodded. "Let's give it to the finale. Let the people finish the ending themselves." At the premiere of this version, the audience really fell silent. No one was coughing. No one was rustling. 2 minutes of silence, the kind that makes you want to cry and laugh. Someone in the third row took a neighbor's hand. I stood at the door and thought, this is it, a common breathing. Everything is for him. Sometimes I feel like I've finally learned how to talk to the city. I don't expect miracles from him. He doesn't promise me eternity. We share honestly. I put a chair for him and leave the light on. He gives me space instead of emptiness. When I get to Mulholland at night and look at the lights, it no longer seems to me that they are judges. These are just other people's kitchens, where someone cooks soup, someone holds a palm on the back of a loved one, and someone teaches a child to pronounce vanilla without an extra L. I still keep her letters, the ones I wrote myself and will never send. I'm still saving the photo with the 2 cappuccinos on the table by the window. Sometimes I still feel that light vanilla trace in the air, and I smile. But now I know that memory is not a prison if it has windows. I open them wide, and when Los Angeles breathes its warm wine, the rooms no longer feel small. One day, leaving the hall after a vanilla evening, I stopped at the door, looked at an empty chair, and for the first time sat down on it myself. I sat for a minute, thinking about nothing. Just like that, I got up, turned off the light, and went out into the courtyard. The night was clean, with no promises. I inhaled and whispered, almost comically, "I'm here. I'm coming." And the city responded. Not the hum of the highway, not the siren, just a quiet, human sound. A window was open somewhere above.